"Ma'am, this isn't the kind of place you just walk into soaked like that." The words landed harder than the storm Celeste Moore had just walked through. She hadn't even spoken yet. Claire Whitmore stood with arms folded, her navy heels tapping impatiently on the polished tile Celeste had personally designed 8 years ago. But Claire didn't know that. She didn't recognize the woman standing in front of her, rain-drenched, wearing a worn trench coat, natural curls sticking to her face, and no makeup. Just a quiet stare. Ever been judged just by how you look, in a place you built with your own hands? "Tell us where you're watching from." Celeste looked around. Nothing had changed. The gold leaf menu frames she picked, the caramel leather booths, the soul jazz humming under the soft lights. It was still hers. Yet here she stood, being treated like an intruder. "I just came for lunch," Celeste said calmly. Claire's gaze slid to her shoes, still wet. "We're reservation only, and we do have a dress code. The coffee shop 2 blocks down might be more casual." Celeste smiled faintly. Not the friendly kind. The kind you give when someone crosses a line and doesn't even know it. Behind her, the door chimed. A white couple entered, also soaked. Claire's posture changed instantly. "Mr. and Mrs. Langley, welcome back. Table by the fireplace?" she chirped. No mention of dress code. No pause. Celeste didn't move. She watched as Claire ushered them in, offering champagne flutes before they'd even sat down. She turned back toward Celeste. "Still here?" she asked, smiling thinly. Celeste slowly reached into her coat pocket, pulled out her phone, and tapped a single line. "Initiate ethics protocol. Savannah. Immediate review." Claire blinked. "Excuse me?" But Celeste wasn't looking at her anymore. She was looking up, at the chandelier she chose, in the restaurant she built, in the city that once told her she didn't belong. And this time, she wasn't going to stay silent. Celeste didn't always wear power suits or sit on national ethics boards. Once upon a time, she wore a grease-stained apron and cooked out of a borrowed church kitchen. Her first catering gig was a funeral repast. 6 trays of oxtail, cornbread, and peach cobbler made with her grandma's cast-iron skillet. She didn't even have enough to buy foil pans. She wrapped it all in thrift store baking tins. That was 26 years ago. Today, Celeste Moore was the founder and CEO of Moore's Table, a restaurant group with 31 locations across 9 states, known for reimagining soul food with 5-star precision. She was also the chairwoman of the Food Service Ethics Directorate, FSED, an independent body that reviewed service standards for over 400 restaurants nationally. And yet, no title had ever mattered more to her than Chef C. It wasn't just about food. It was about dignity. Celeste had built Moore's Table to be the kind of place she wished had existed when she was younger. A space where no one would ever be turned away, no matter what they looked like or what they wore. She remembered too well the night she was kicked out of a fine dining spot in Midtown Atlanta. The hostess didn't even let her reach the podium, just looked her up and down and said, "This establishment doesn't seat solo diners after 8 p.m. That night she sat in her car for 2 hours, not angry, just numb. She swore that if she ever had her own restaurant, no one would be made to feel like they didn't belong. Savannah was personal. It was her hometown. This flagship location stood just 5 blocks from the apartment where she grew up, sharing 1 bedroom with 3 cousins. Every tile, every track light, every recipe in that restaurant had her fingerprints on it. And yet, Claire had looked her in the face and dismissed her like a nobody. Celeste didn't need to yell. She didn't need to explain. She just needed to remind them who built the table in the first place. Claire was all smiles now. "Right this way, Mr. and Mrs. Langley," she said, leading the couple past Celeste like she wasn't even there. "Your table by the fireplace is ready. And of course, 2 glasses of our house sparkling to start." Celeste turned slightly, watching as they were seated at a booth trimmed in brass, a design she had personally fought for when the architect said it was too soft for upscale. The couple didn't notice her. They were laughing, shaking the rain off their coats, already being handed warm towels and menus printed on linen. Just 15 feet away, Celeste stood alone, still wet, still holding her umbrella, still waiting. No one offered her a towel. No one asked her name. No one even asked if she wanted water. Across the room, a young hostess named Jasmine stood frozen near the hostess stand. She had seen the whole thing. Her eyes flicked to Celeste, then quickly back down. Her jaw was tight, but her body stayed still, like she wasn't sure if stepping forward would cost her job. Claire returned to the host stand and glanced briefly at Celeste. "You're still here?" she asked, voice flat. Celeste just tilted her head slightly, still waiting to be treated like a guest. Claire gave a short, incredulous laugh. "We have a very specific environment here. It's curated. Some guests align with that. Others don't." Celeste let that hang in the air for a moment. From the fireplace booth, the Langleys raised their glasses as a server arrived with amuse-bouche and a personal welcome card signed by Executive Chef Charles A. Monroe. Celeste didn't need champagne. She didn't need a linen menu. What she needed, what she had always needed, was to see the truth laid bare. And in that moment, it was clearer than ever. Same room, same rain, two completely different Americas. Celeste didn't flinch. She didn't raise her voice, roll her eyes, or storm out. That wasn't her style. Instead, she quietly stepped to the side, took a seat on a bench near the hostess stand, and pulled out her phone. The same one that held access to every location's service dashboard. She tapped once. Location, Savannah. Observation log, active. Across the room, Claire was back at the Langleys' table, kneeling beside them like royalty had just entered the room. She laughed a little too loud, touched Mrs. Langley's wrist like they were old friends, then snapped her fingers at a server to bring extra bread. Celeste noted the time, 12:43 p.m. Manager neglects unattended guest for over 8 minutes. Jasmine, the young hostess, glanced over again. Their eyes met. Celeste offered a calm nod. Jasmine looked away, chewing the inside of her cheek. Celeste turned her attention to the floor plan on her screen. She knew this restaurant like the back of her hand. Every table number, every server route. She designed it, every detail. Claire passed by again, still pretending Celeste didn't exist. Another note, 12:46 p.m. Selective engagement. Champagne served to white guests without verifying IDs. Guest of color still unacknowledged. Celeste didn't need a confrontation. She needed evidence. Let them talk. Let them laugh. Let them show who they really were. Every slight, every word, every avoidance. It all went into the log. Not out of spite, out of principle. Because this wasn't just about her anymore. It was about every customer who'd ever been made to feel invisible. And right now, Claire Whitmore was making a strong case for why some people shouldn't be trusted to represent a brand built on dignity. Celeste placed her phone face down on her lap. Her fingers stopped moving, but her eyes never did. She'd seen enough to make a decision, but she wasn't done watching. Not yet. Celeste finally stood. She walked slowly toward the open kitchen pass, where a row of plated appetizers shimmered under heat lamps. No one stopped her. No one asked who she was. She paused near a tray holding one of her oldest signature dishes, bourbon-glazed short ribs over truffle grits. She leaned in slightly, took in the aroma, smiled faintly. Claire appeared beside her, arms crossed. "Ma'am, guests aren't allowed this close to the kitchen, especially not during VIP service." Celeste didn't blink. "I was just admiring the short ribs. I remember when this dish first appeared on the tasting menu in Midtown." Claire raised an eyebrow. "Oh, you're familiar with our tasting menus?" "I'm the one who wrote it," Celeste replied softly. Claire laughed. Not cruel, just dismissive. The kind of laugh that assumes you're joking because it's easier than considering you might be telling the truth. "Well, that's cute," Claire said. "But this particular menu's been curated for elevated clientele. It's not, the kind of soul food you'd find at backyard barbecues." Celeste studied her for a moment. No anger, just quiet recognition. "You know what's funny? she said. "That recipe came from a backyard barbecue. My Uncle Ray made it every 4th of July with a whiskey bottle in one hand and a harmonica in the other." Claire shifted, suddenly unsure. Celeste continued, still calm. "He taught me that flavor comes from history, from struggle, from being overlooked and still showing up with a plate in hand." Claire smiled tightly, clearly uncomfortable. "I'm sure that's meaningful, but our guests come here for something a little more refined." Celeste nodded slowly. "Right, something that looks like soul food, but served without the soul." And with that, she turned, walked back to her seat, and tapped her phone again. One more entry, one more receipt. One step closer to the reckoning. Celeste sat back down. Her phone buzzed once, a subtle nudge from the internal FSED app. Savannah's monthly ethics rating was due in 3 days, but Celeste didn't wait 3 days. She opened the app, toggled to internal review access, and pressed override. "Emergency protocol, level 2 ethics breach, Savannah location." Immediately the screen changed. "Activate full site audit? Yes. Timestamp 12:57 p.m. Notify executive board? Yes. Flag regional leadership. Immediate action required." Claire was still across the room, laughing with the Langleys. Not a clue in the world. Celeste didn't need to announce herself. That's not how power works when it's real. She didn't need a camera crew. She didn't need to scream. She just needed data, documentation, and the will to act. She texted Brittany, her longtime chief of staff. "Savannah has failed baseline conduct. Ethics score to drop to 4.1. VIP flag suspended. Board call at 2 p.m. I'll lead it." A few seconds later, Brittany replied, "Copy. Regional ops notified. Internal lockdown starts at close of lunch service." Celeste stared at the message for a beat, then locked her phone. The wheels were already turning. In less than 90 minutes, Savannah would lose its VIP service status, meaning no more embassy dinners, no more private bookings, no more chef showcases. The ripple would cost the branch at least $3.6 million in bookings and PR within the next 45 days, and no one here had a clue. Celeste looked around. The kitchen was still buzzing. Servers were still pouring wine. Claire was still comfortable, but not for long. Because the next thing Celeste was about to do wasn't just about punishment. It was about reclaiming the space she built for people who were never meant to be excluded in the first place. It started with the tiles. Celeste stood slowly, walked toward the hostess stand, and ran her fingers across the edge of the counter. A smooth walnut finish. Custom stained. She had picked that exact tone herself. "Georgia Dusk," the vendor called it. Jasmine watched her, confused. No one else touched that counter like that. Then came the second clue. Celeste glanced up at the light fixtures and muttered softly, "They dimmed the chandeliers. That's not how it was set during design." Jasmine blinked. "Wait, what?" Celeste turned to her, still calm. "You're new, aren't you?" Jasmine nodded slowly. Celeste smiled gently. "You're the first person here who made eye contact with me. That matters more than you think." Before Jasmine could reply, Claire walked over, brows tight. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, still oblivious. Celeste looked her straight in the eye. "Actually, yes. The standard you've created here, it's not just unethical. It's unrecognizable." Claire scoffed. "Excuse me?" Celeste didn't flinch. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a slim black leather case. Inside it was a small embossed card. She held it up between 2 fingers, slowly. "Celeste Moore, founder and chief executive of Moore's Table." Claire froze. Around them, the restaurant buzz dropped by half. Jasmine covered her mouth. A server at the bar whispered, "Wait, that's her." Celeste tucked the card away, her voice steady. "I designed this space. Every chair, every plate, every recipe in that kitchen. You just asked the woman who built the table to leave it." Claire's face went pale, but Celeste wasn't done. She turned to Jasmine. "You should never be afraid to do what's right, even when the wrong people are in charge." Then she looked back at Claire. "And you? You're about to learn what it means to be held accountable." Claire's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Across the restaurant, the clinking of forks and quiet jazz faded into silence. Every server, hostess, and diner seemed to pause mid-movement. Even the couple at the fireplace turned their heads, expressions frozen somewhere between shock and curiosity. Celeste didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "Claire Whitmore," she said calmly, "as of this moment, you are no longer an employee of Moore's Table." Claire blinked rapidly. I don't think you can just—" "I can," Celeste interrupted, voice unwavering. "And I just did." She pulled her phone from her coat and tapped twice. "HR has received the dismissal. Your access will be revoked by close of business. A security associate will walk you out." Claire's face flushed crimson. "This is outrageous. I didn't even know who you were. And that's the problem," Celeste said sharply. "You didn't know because you didn't bother to ask. You judged, you dismissed, you disrespected the very foundation this company stands on." Jasmine stood frozen behind the host stand, eyes wide. Celeste turned toward her. "Jasmine, please notify the staff that all remaining shifts today will continue as planned. No one else is being let go." Claire spun toward Jasmine. "Don't you dare!" Celeste cut in again, still calm. "One more word, and I'll have security escort you out now." Claire's jaw clenched, but she said nothing. Then Celeste raised her phone again. "To all regional leaders and the executive board, this is to confirm that the Savannah flagship location has officially failed its ethics compliance evaluation. As of this afternoon, VIP status will be revoked for a minimum of 45 days. Gasps rippled through the staff. A manager near the kitchen dropped a tray. Celeste looked at the team. "This means no private bookings, no embassy dinners, no feature press events." She paused. "Projected loss over the next 6 weeks, approximately $3.6 million. Claire wavered on her feet. "You didn't just lose your job," Celeste said. "You cost this location its reputation. You cost your team their trust. And you cost us all the chance to show the world what hospitality should really look like." Claire whispered, "I made a mistake." Celeste nodded. "Yes, and now we all live with the price of it." She turned to Jasmine once more. "Take over as acting floor supervisor for the day. I'll speak with you later." The young woman nodded, still stunned. Celeste took one final look around the restaurant. Then, softly, "Let this be the last time a guest is treated like a problem instead of a person." She didn't slam the door behind her. She didn't need to. The silence she left behind said everything. Celeste didn't leave. Not yet. She stepped back from the center of the dining room and let the silence settle. No one moved. No one knew if they should return to serving water or clearing plates or checking in on guests, because everyone could feel it. Something bigger than one firing had just happened. She turned to Jasmine, who was still standing behind the hostess stand, now fielding wide-eyed stares from both staff and customers. "Can you gather the staff in the back room for a 5-minute huddle?" Celeste asked gently. Jasmine nodded quickly and disappeared. Celeste turned to the guests now. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. Her presence did the talking. "For those of you who witnessed what just happened," she said, scanning the room, "thank you for your patience." Several diners nodded slowly. One elderly black man near the corner raised his glass. "I want you to know," she continued, "that what you saw today is not what Moore's Table represents, but it is what happens when accountability is delayed for too long." She paused. "We say we're a hospitality brand, but hospitality without dignity isn't service, it's performance." With that, she walked toward the back, where the employees were already gathering in the break room. Some stood with arms crossed. Others sat quietly, unsure of what came next. Celeste didn't bring a clipboard. She didn't bring notes. She brought her presence and the weight of what she was about to do. "I know this is not what any of you expected when you came in for your shift today," she said, "but I need you to understand why it's happening." A few glanced up. Most stayed quiet. This location has been under review for 3 months, she explained. There were already customer complaints, small ones, micro moments of exclusion, of favoritism, of certain guests receiving service while others were made to wait. She looked around the room. But today was different. Today wasn't micro. It was loud, it was public, it was recorded, and it left no doubt. Several employees shifted, clearly uneasy. "I'm not here to punish anyone who didn't speak up," Celeste continued. "I understand fear. I've worked under people like Claire too, but that ends now." She reached into her bag and pulled out a slim folder. "This is the first draft of the Charter for Guest Dignity, a mandatory policy that will apply to every Moore's Table location starting next quarter. It includes a rotating blind guest audit program, anonymous service evaluations by real diners from diverse backgrounds, mandatory cultural and anti-bias training for all team leads, a 90-day ethics review for all floor managers and supervisors, and a new clause that gives any employee the right to escalate unethical treatment of staff or guests directly to the ethics board, bypassing chain of command." She held up the folder for everyone to see. "This isn't just paperwork. This is protection. For the customer and for you." A soft murmur moved through the room. "You don't work for Claire anymore. You work for a vision. And that vision says, no guest should ever feel invisible in a space designed to celebrate them." Jasmine's eyes welled up. A server next to her clapped once, then slowly others joined in. Not loud, just steady. Celeste nodded, then lowered her voice. "And one more thing. Starting tomorrow, we'll be conducting listening sessions. I want to hear what you see on the floor, what you feel, because a policy is only good if it reflects the people who live it every day." She paused, let the words land. "You have a voice now. Don't waste it." She turned to leave, but stopped in the doorway. "To rebuild trust," she said, "we start by telling the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, especially then." And then she walked out, leaving behind not just silence this time, but something heavier. Responsibility. Because it wasn't just about who got fired. It was about who stood up after. 3 days later, Claire showed up at the corporate office. She wasn't escorted in. She wasn't scheduled. She just walked in holding a slim envelope and waited quietly at the front desk. When Brittany, Celeste's chief of staff, informed her of Claire's presence, Celeste didn't seem surprised. "Let her in," she said, "but only 5 minutes." Claire stepped into the office like someone entering a place they never thought they'd see again. Not because they weren't allowed, but because they'd never believed they didn't belong. Celeste didn't offer her a seat. Claire stood, shoulders stiff, eyes down for a second, then slowly met Celeste's gaze. "I'm not here to get my job back," she said. There's something I need to say." Celeste gave a slight nod. Claire cleared her throat. "I knew who you were, not the day you walked in, but later that night. I looked you up. A beat. I saw your photo on the cover of Forbes' Black Women in Hospitality, and I remembered that face. You'd shaken hands with the mayor. You opened 3 locations across the Southeast. You're on the board of a national culinary council." She hesitated. "And then I saw the video, the one someone posted, of you standing in my dining room, quiet, calm, and I looked like..." She stopped herself. Celeste tilted her head. "Like what?" Claire's voice broke. "Like every woman who ever told someone they didn't belong." Silence. She pulled the envelope from her purse and set it on Celeste's desk. "It's not much. A written apology. Signed. To you, to Jasmine, to the staff. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted the record to be clear." Celeste didn't reach for the envelope. Instead, she said, "What made you come here?" Claire looked down at her hands. "Because I spent 2 nights convincing myself you were just angry, that it was personal, that I didn't deserve what happened. And then I realized this wasn't about deserving. It was about responsibility, and I failed mine." Celeste studied her for a long moment. Then, quietly, she said, "It's easy to hold power when everyone's watching, harder when no one is." Claire nodded. "I understand that now. Celeste finally picked up the envelope. "You lost your job, Claire," she said. "But if you choose to rebuild who you are, maybe you won't lose everything else." Claire turned to leave, then stopped at the door. "For what it's worth," she said softly, "the menu tasted different when I realized who created it." Celeste looked up. "It always did. You just never asked who was cooking." 2 weeks later, the Savannah location of Moore's Table reopened its VIP services, not with fireworks, not with PR banners, but with something rarer, a full house of returning guests, including 2 embassy representatives, a Grammy-nominated jazz singer, and the president of the Georgia Culinary Institute. The mood was different, quieter, more intentional. The music played lower. The servers moved with a mix of pride and relief. Guests looked staff in the eye and greeted them by name. Near the host stand, Jasmine stood tall, in a navy blazer, not a hostess apron. Celeste watched from the edge of the dining room. Jasmine approached her, trying to stay composed. "I still can't believe this." "You earned it," Celeste replied. "You showed grace when no one asked you to. That's leadership." Jasmine looked around the room. "Everyone feels different, like we all know we're rebuilding something that matters." "You are," Celeste said. "But don't forget, rebuilding is harder than launching. It takes patience, and people who remember why we started." She handed Jasmine a new ID badge. Jasmine Taylor, Floor Supervisor, Savannah Flagship. Jasmine's eyes shimmered. "You'll make mistakes," Celeste added. "But the difference now, we'll talk about them, fix them, together." In the background, the kitchen bell chimed. Plates went out. Guests toasted. Celeste looked around the space she built, and finally saw it becoming what she dreamed. A restaurant that served food, yes, but more than that, it served belonging. And this time, no one would be asked to leave the table they helped set. The room was packed. Industry executives, food critics, hospitality CEOs, nonprofit leaders, and even a few senators filled the wide conference hall at the Atlanta Equity Forum. Behind the podium stood a tall white banner. "Guest dignity is not optional." Celeste took the stage in silence. She didn't need a flashy opening. Her name was already on everyone's tongue. The video of her calmly firing a manager had gone viral. Her charter for guest dignity had been requested by 12 hospitality brands in just 1 week. But Celeste wasn't here for applause. She adjusted the mic, her voice steady. "I built Moore's Table not for trendsetters," she began, "but for truth tellers. People who walk into a restaurant and expect to be seen, not just served." A quiet murmur of agreement. This charter isn't just policy. It's a promise that no matter your accent, your skin, your clothes, or your seat, you are welcome. Fully. She looked out across the room, at faces from every walk of life. "We failed that promise, but we owned it, and now we rebuild it, together." She raised a copy of the charter. "This document will be adopted by all Moore's Table locations next quarter, but today, 6 other brands have already signed on." The crowd stirred. Reporters leaned forward. "We're not just changing menus," Celeste said. "We're changing mindsets." And in that moment, beneath warm lights, between business suits and chef jackets, something shifted. It wasn't just a CEO speaking. It was a woman who had once been told she didn't belong, now setting the standard for who does. Have you ever been treated like you didn't belong? Somewhere you built, somewhere you paid for, or simply somewhere you had every right to be? Tell us where you're watching from. And if you've ever had to stay calm when the world tried to shrink you. Because sometimes, power doesn't speak loudly. It walks in quietly, freezes $3.6 million, rewrites the rules, and then hands the next girl the key to the front door.